Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us.
Well, I'm from London, so good afternoon for me.
Fantastic. And I live in Raleigh, North Carolina in the US. So good morning for me. But no matter which part of the world you're joining us from, hello. My name is Parvathy Krishnan.
My name's Niveda.
And together we are so proud to welcome you to our very first podcast called.
South Asian women in rare.
In this podcast, you'll hear a lot about us and you'll hear even more about all the guests that we're going to be inviting, and we're so excited. Just a quick introduction. I'm Parvati Krishnan. I'm mom to two medically complex children with multiple genetic disorders. My advocacy is my second rebirth of a profession. I started off as a clinical dietitian and I loved being in the hospital, surrounded by my patients, supporting them, making sure that they're healthy and can go home. And then my children brought about a whole different world that I did not know existed. And I started advocacy when they started getting different diagnoses. Advocacy has looked very different for me throughout this entire process. What started off from a hospital room has since become us starting our own foundation to honor our daughter who passed away, to now being involved in different boards, contributing both as a member of the organizations I work for, to contributing as a global expert in ultra rare diseases, which is what my son still has and is with us. So that's a little about me. Now off to Niveda.
Hi, my name's Niveda. I am a person who has osteogenesis imperfecta type 3. Is a rare um disorder that I have, and I met Parvati through the YLP program that is done by Rare Diseases International.
And we both connected and had shared thoughts and feelings. And we learned that there are so many more similarities no matter what our age differences are. I am younger. Kidding. No matter what our ages or our geographical barriers or our disease state, we realized that there was a lot that was actually in common. From a cultural standpoint, from a heritage standpoint, we felt like there was a lot that drove us to do what we are doing today, but also influences our thoughts and our actions and our decisions. And so we wanted to start this podcast to highlight so many other South Asians in our space, in the small rare disease space, who are doing amazing work and are making their mark every single day. So, Niveda, tell us more about this podcast. What can people expect?
So what people can expect is different voices, hopefully more frequently, exploring different conditions, rare conditions that is around South Asia and the different perspectives that people have as a result of their own areas of expertise.
One of the things that came to me when we were talking about this and planning this was how much of a cultural impact it has on our day to day.
Yep.
So I am an immigrant and a proud South Asian, grew up in India and have lived most of my life now in the US, but there are still a lot of ethos and roots that I carry with me that I constantly have to re-identify myself as. Is this because of the cultural impact of me growing up, or is it because of the culture that I have now learned to embrace and love? And so I've constantly had to refocus and reshift and redefine to myself which identity I exhibit today. And sometimes it's
Yep.
actually a mishmash, and I've realized that it's a new identity that I've carved for myself that has the best of both worlds. So what do you think, Naveda? What has driven you, and have you had these kinds of cultural identity crisis or even thoughts about it?
100%. So I was born and lived in Germany for 10 years before my family decided to move to the UK for the benefits of our education and support regarding rare conditions that we would receive. Again, I was born as a Hindu Brahmin, so there is a lot of areas where I'd have to think, is this me or is this my culture or is it a bit of both? And I have spent time reflecting it, and I'm thinking to myself, is this me? But it's also a bit of both, where the culture that you're rooted and connected to is also linking with the culture that you are surrounded by these days.
Right. And I think that's one of the things we connected on because you live in a different country and I live in a different country. But then when we met at a common area, it was our language that connected us because we ended up speaking a language that no one else understood. And I felt like it was almost our superpower because
It almost felt
we
like a
were not,
secret language.
right. And we weren't even saying anything about anybody there. I think we were just talking about the most random stuff like how long did you wait at the bus stop or
Yep.
I think we commented about our common dislike just in general for like the food or the taste. And made me think, I was like, this is our superpower. What most people don't, it's a personal choice what language you speak and how much of other languages you learn and retain. And I'm so thankful that I have been able to retain that because it's bonded me with strangers that I never knew about until we randomly would say something and be like, aha, they're my people. And so I do feel like these commonalities of what brought us together to start something like this. And then,
100%.
right, delve into how our work ethics are so similar, even though we're different ages and stages of our life. And even to this point that you said, my question to you is, do you feel like it took a lot on your parents to learn not just to live in all these different countries and learn healthcare, but to raise someone with a rare disease? What is your perspective as a child? Because that's always my question, right? I'm raising two. And so my question is, how does this culture and background and all of that influence you?
Culture and background had a little less of an influence when I was a child than I am an adult. Mainly because as a child, most of my life has been spent in hospitals. I literally have surgery at least once a year. I would have bisphosphonate infusions that be hospitalized for sometimes up to 4 times a year. So just between all of that, it would always be the constant of me having my mum around me. And my mum, she doesn't speak a lot of English, and sometimes doesn't understand it. So from that perspective, I had to learn to be my own advocate from a very young age. I had to be able to also translate what the doctors were saying from a very young age. So my mum was able to understand and in turn help me make the right decision for myself. Pretty much have a benefit of having that second perspective of then being able to make my own choices.
That's so fascinating because I think that is something that's very common in many cultures, is where children then become the interpreters and the onus falls on them to help the family navigate a crisis. And it's interesting because it's a different or an extra layer in what you're saying because
Mhm.
that was your own navigation that you were trying to explain to your parent who was helping, who would make the decision, but also help you understand it. And so that's so fascinating to me because, right, most of my life I've spent raising my child, like teaching him to advocate for himself, but the onus and the decision was still on me. And the language was not a barrier. And that's a huge difference. But
Yep.
what you're saying is so relatable to anyone, not just South Asians. I think any immigrant in the world where the child becomes such a focal point because they are not just, and it's multi-generational as well. Sometimes the child is helping their parents with the grandparents, right? Because the
Mhm.
grandparents are sick. And it doesn't have to do with rare disease, but it brings it to a next level when it's rare disease and there's oftentimes no cure, no treatments, but this is like the best course of action, and then you are then taking the onus. So how
Yeah.
was that in your space?
Well, it'd be different because it depends on the parent at the end of the day, I guess. And that choice from a very young age was left to my brother. It would be like, who does my brother want? 9 out of 10, it would be dad. Because I'm pretty sure he could get away with a lot of rule breaking. It would be dad. And then the occasional follow up checkups, dad would be the one who take me, especially in England. In Germany, it was a lot of my mum again because mum knew the public transport system. Mum knew how to get from A to Z a lot quicker. And then whereas dad, it was like when we came to the UK, the roles were kind of reversed where mum would be there if I was staying in hospital and dad would be there if I was having follow-up appointments.
Our parents thing. We are resourceful as a community in general.
Yep.
We do what we have to do to keep it going, and I think that's a superpower. Another superpower that we can say we have is and I think that's just in general a superpower for all rare disease parents and caregivers. We do what we have to do for the people we love, and it can be a partner, it can be a
Mhm.
child, it can be a sibling. I mean, our siblings. In my case, my sibling. Ours is a little more different because we're not the patients ourselves, but both are so like my husband's sibling and we are so thankful to have them in our life because they can come in and give us support and comfort.
Yep.
Even if they cannot take care of our children right away, if they're in the hospital, obviously we have to make those decisions. And I think in general, in South Asian communities, we're pretty close with our families, and most often that is also some people that we can fall back on, and that's just phenomenal. Has any of this influenced or shifted your advocacy or how you have decided to share your story?
Not in many ways. In some ways, yes. Especially when there's that language barrier, obviously. That's like the main thing. Where I kind of also had to learn a bit more about my condition from a very young age. And in return, I kind of started becoming my own advocate. I now am able to go the odd occasion to the doctor for myself. I can say that I don't think this is the right medication for me. I think it is this, and therefore I need this. And they'll be like, why do you think that? And I'm like, I have a why. I think I broke my ribs. And yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, so it has built your superpower, right? All your experiences growing up, learning to be that voice has now helped you speak for yourself as well, but also you do a lot more than just advocating for yourself. Tell us more about your journey representing other orgs and places you've gone.
I am a member of the Broadband Society. I attend their conferences annually. I made a ton of friends within the OI community through the society itself. And yeah, I'm meeting actually some of them tomorrow, and we're gonna hang out and play games at a cafe. Apart from that, I have done a degree in human nutrition. I grew up wanting to become a pediatric doctor, changed my mind, wanted to become a pediatric nurse. Didn't actually work out. That is a very long story that I am not going into right now. I decided to do a degree in human nutrition, did that, went and applied for hundreds of jobs with loads of rejections. And in between all of that, I was also working as a library volunteer. And then basically, in return, they had no opening. I applied, got it. And I've just been slowly increasing my levels within the organization.
Phenomenal. What has been your biggest secret in pivoting or learning to navigate these different pivots and all of these goals and life in general?
We go through so much, and then we, when something doesn't sit right for us, or when something doesn't go right for us, I immediately go, right, I'm not really in the mood. I go in a very bad mood. But then it's also that I even forget this myself, but it's like a constant reminder of like when one door closes, another one opens. That has been amazing for me to see that, especially the past 5 years where I did a degree in nutrition. I applied for so many jobs in nutrition, and I had so many rejections in that field that in turn I went through becoming a library assistant in my local organization. And in that, I saw the need of raising awareness, not just for rare diseases, but for disabilities in general. And there was a lack of things being done within my community. So I came in, I introduced the Disability Pride Month, which is in July, Disability History Month, which is around November, December. I even went to the extent of organizing a talk. And then my friends were like, hi, there's this program that's coming out. I think you'd be fantastic to expand on your advocacy skills and um yeah, basically explore the world. And I was like, okay, do you know what? Why not? At that moment, I was going through another tough situation, and I was like, do you know what? Why not? Let's just go for it. I applied and I got it.
That's awesome. So both in adversity, you found an outlet to say, let me just explore. And
Hmm.
when things didn't change, as hard as it is, and I tell my son this all the time, it seems easy when people say when one door closes, another opens, but it's very
Yeah.
hard to see where this door is, find it, open it, and go in and then reveal that this is a better choice. It's a work in progress. It's not as easy as when one door
Yep.
opens, closes, another opens. So I do see that it's easier said than done, but you have lived through it and you've lived through every emotion that you just mentioned, including making the most of it yourself and finding joy in it. And now you are the expert in that area and people do look up to you to say, okay, this is happening, what do I do? And I think that's amazing. And that is such a great sign of a leader because you took what you had, you gave what was dealt with you, and you said, let's see what else we can do to explore and educate. Because I think a lot of times, at least growing up for me, I didn't see a lot of people who were like me, either culturally, geographically from where I was, that stood up and said, this is who we are, this is what we represent, and we need
Hmm.
more, and I think that that's one of the reasons what drew me to advocacy was at one point both my children were in the hospital, different floors, same floors, rooms next to each other, and we saw a lot of systemic issues that were coming up. No fault of theirs. We were also chronic hospital visitors, so I think we saw it more just because of the frequency with which, like you mentioned, we were there. We're doers more than complainers, and so
Yep.
that's what drew me to advocacy because I was like, okay, I've seen these issues and I don't want to just complain and get a voucher or a parking pass. I want to do something about it. And I think that is very unique because you saw something as well where you were like, well, they don't even recognize Disability Month or Pride Month or a combination of
Yeah.
those. And there's just something you just want to make sure we don't get forgotten and we don't get lost and we don't, we have to be counted for. And kudos to you for doing that. I was in my PJs with my hair messed up and I walked over and I was just sitting in this room mulling over how I have this list of issues I've seen over this long space of time and I have solutions that may or may not work, but I at least wanted someone to listen to this. And I was just lucky because I was sitting in a room where the head of patient relations for the hospital system was there. And they were like, well, we have an advocacy board that are just patients and families. Do you want to come? And at that point, I was like, sure. I mean, I've been stuck in this hospital for 3 months with my children. So he was like, hey, we'll have food. And I was like, okay, the change of QC, let me just come down and see
Yep.
what this is all about. When you're in the hospital for that long, you're happy to do anything that makes you feel human and not just
Yeah.
associated as a parent or as a person who's asking doctors all these questions. And so I went down and that was the most pivotal changing moment of my life because when I walked in there, I realized that hospital administration, nursing administration, there were so many people that were there in the evening after a full day's job, just open and wanting to listen to patients and families. And
Hmm.
so it also gave me hope because I was like, oh my God, these people are nuts because they've just finished a 12-hour shift and they're sitting here smiling and wanting to talk to us. But it also brought out a humanity that beyond their jobs, they want to just give back and
Yep.
volunteer and do better. And I think like that is what sparked my rebirth as an advocate because I was like, if these people can do it, we can do it too. So what can we do in our small way? And even if it meant going down from the hospital room to attend this meeting and support projects, if they were okay with me coming in my PJs and my hair put up, I was like, why not? Like if I can be of use there and if I can be of purpose there, then there's the method to this madness. And yeah, that we try to do the
100%.
most we can where we are. Yeah.
100%.
So tell me more about your experience in the international space.
Oh God, where do I begin?
Oh my God, this is what happens when you're too good and you have so many different examples to do. You're like, oh, where do I begin? Why did
um,
you feel like your voice had to be heard by others? How about that?
I think it's like every experience is unique, and even if you can just tell your story and maybe make a change in another person's life. Sometimes you don't see that person, but they might know you from LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. If you can make that one little change or spark an inspiration for them, I'd be like, yeah, I think I've done the right thing.
There's always finding
Um,
purpose, and that's your purpose.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, awesome.
So, Parvati, you have set up the Krishna Foundation.
Mhm.
Would you like to tell us a bit more about your foundation?
Yes, happy to. So we actually started the foundation after our daughter passed away, because we wanted to continue her legacy. And because by then I was deep into the advocacy space, we did not want to start another foundation for the conditions that she had because they were foundations that were already there. So we said, let's just do what we can to spread awareness in the South Asian space because we did not have as much as it is there is today. And so
Mhm.
we started our foundation. We started doing toy drives during Diwali because and Ramadan because those are very, very big holidays in the South Asian population. And
Yep.
we turned it into action and we said, if we can do a Christmas toy drive, our community can definitely do a Diwali toy drive. And so our way of raising awareness was to say, we're this family, we're an Indian family, we live here, we our children have these genetic disorders. I think that was the biggest step of being uncomfortable in something to become comfortable because it was very difficult to put your story out there to say our children were ill, our daughter passed away, and this is why we started it. But there are other children like them in the hospital. If genetic testing can be done, please do it. These are, like, and this was 12 years ago, and where it wasn't as open and it wasn't as advertised, at least where we live. So we live in a very heavily South Asian populated area. So we started our foundation. We started doing a lot of toy drives. We did Kindle drives, whatever the hospitals wanted. We also we're fortunate that our children could go to different parts of this country to get care. And so
Mhm.
we started doing more toy drives in those regions as well as we started getting more families and friends to volunteer. And then I had more time, and we have a huge research consortium at Sick Kids Toronto called the Replication Repair Consortium that does research on the condition my son has. And there was no family advocacy support group at that time. So we rebranded and we said, okay, let's focus on this condition that's ultra rare. There's
Okay.
less than 250 people worldwide living with this condition. There's no support group, there's no advocacy or awareness that's happening in that space. And so we then decided to refocus our organization's mission and vision to support the CMMRD community. CMMRD is the number one most aggressive form of pediatric cancer predisposition. And so children who have this condition are at high risk for developing cancers as often as every 2 years, different cancers, sometimes more than one cancer at the same time that's not connected with each other. And so our mission became focusing on genetic testing awareness, awareness in LMICs because there is a higher chance of families that have consanguineous marriages to have these conditions and passed down through their children. We also wanted to do more support on just pediatric cancer awareness because it is still a rare disease and there is not a lot of funding and research that is available to children who are experiencing it. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about our foundation and the work we do.
That sounds absolutely amazing, and honoring your daughter at the same time is just
Yeah.
incredible.
Our motto after our daughter passed away was it's not how long you live, it's how well you live and the legacy you leave behind. And so we know through our work and the work that we do in our community and just her awesome smile makes us all go. And she's going to live a long, long life in her legacy.
Yes, 100%. What was the most challenging thing that you found out because you don't just work in rare, you work in ultra rare.
Mhm.
So, what is one of the most challenging things that you found in that area?
Oh, so many things. Which one do I start? It's the lack of resources in general. If you don't have a diagnosis, you're not counted. But what if you have a diagnosis and it's so small that you're still not counted? That's just as painful because now you have a diagnosis, but there's no access to therapy that is only there in some parts of the world because of where you live. Where you live shouldn't determine whether you have access to therapy or not, but that is the state of our our current world. We hope to break those barriers, but it's not easy because it's not something, it's not just, oh, if we gave money, we can get it. There's like safety issues, there's access issues, there's availability issues. And so there's a lot more to learn, but the one thing that we can offer, whether you are rare or ultra rare, is support.
Mhm.
Finding your people. Like I would not be able to find maybe another family in Australia with CMMRD, but I can definitely find you rare disease support groups that can provide you with an ecosystem for everything else that you need besides this drug or besides this treatment or besides this expert. If you need help with a wheelchair, or if you need help with fighting insurance, or if you need help with finding the best hospital, there are amazing rare disease organizations all over the world dedicated to these kinds of things. And so my goal was that if we can still make your living a little better and help you as a family thrive, then that is still one step better than where we were when we started this journey. And so for us, the goal has always been we're ultra rare and we want to be counted and we will be counted. But what can we do until then to still support our community? And so the biggest challenge has been numbers, not having enough people, obviously, but we also don't want anyone to be diagnosed with this awful disease because it means that they're going to be going through the experiences that we have in our life, right? Having a child with
Yeah.
cancer, having multiple cancers because it's a genetic disorder, parents and grandparents and extended family are at risk for cancers as well. So while we don't want more people, if there are people with it, then we want to identify them so we can increase support. We can bring more um, attention to the condition. So possibly more medications can be created in the pipeline for these families and for our children. The second thing I think is hard is not having experts. This is not just
Yep.
an ultra rare problem. This is a chronic problem across all rare
This
diseases,
is a worldwide problem.
worldwide problem. It's just more amplified when your disease is not known because the doctors are like, we don't know what to do with you. And that's very hard to hear as a family because you're like, oh my God, we have to become the doctors now. Like you had
Yeah.
said, they have to start advocating for themselves. So I think resources, we don't get as much funding as some of the other larger conditions and nonprofits get because we don't have numbers. We also don't have very many drugs in the pipeline, so we don't get a lot of pharma funding to support initiatives. We also don't get a lot of public policy bills passed because we're too small a community.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is genetic testing access is genetic testing access. It doesn't have to be for my condition or my child's condition. But if I can support genetic testing access on a larger scale, then we are sort of winning on two sides, right? Our families can get the diagnostics, but
Mhm.
so can everyone with rare diseases. And so we made a conscious effort to partner and collaborate with larger advocacy organizations in the rare disease space that are doing global and national work to share our voice and give them the support that they need to pass these larger initiatives so that it'll be for the greater good of everyone and the CMMRD patients and families.
All rare conditions are important, but the fact that you saw that in that little area, but then also you saw it as a global issue, and the fact that you were willing to go and partner with other organizations just to make sure that, yes, the MMRD is accounted for, and yes, but also everyone else is accounted for.
Yes. And
That's
if it,
amazing.
I mean, we all have to think that way because I mean, if you can move the needle for your own condition or your loved one's condition, amazing, power to you. But when science has not caught up, and this is something I always tell. My daughter didn't pass away because she was weak. She passed away because science hadn't caught up. She was way ahead of her time. She had conditions that weren't diagnosed. She had conditions that no one knew what to do or where to go. Um, Science has to catch up, but until science catches up, we can do everything we can to still support and make sure that there's quality of life and there's thriving and not just living with the people we encounter every day. So no matter how big or small the disease is, you can still make a meaningful change in the life of someone with rare or ultra rare diseases by thinking of the larger picture.
Mhm. 100%. Right. So, what's next? What do you envision this podcast to bring out?
I am hoping that we can have so many of our amazing leaders in this space who are South Asian working in different aspects of rare disease, whether it's research, industry, patient advocacy organizations, obviously, patient leaders, anyone who is in this space who is a mover and shaker in their own space, in their own area. Highlight the work that they're doing. This is a podcast meant to share not only the work that we all are doing, but to bring us together as one community, identify our commonalities and our differences and our challenges so
Mhm.
that we can hopefully be a source of information. Hopefully, our speakers are amazing, so they can be a source of inspiration for those that are coming after us, so they don't have to find their voice. They know how to highlight their voice.
100%.
What is the thing you're most excited about?
I'm more excited about networking, and through this, hopefully, I get to see and meet a lot more people in a lot of different areas of work that they do and learn along the way. That's the
Amazing.
most thing I'm excited about.
And I have to say, I'm super excited that we are officially at least recording, launching maybe a little later, recording this podcast a day before your birthday. So happy birthday, Niveda. So if you all
Thank
are
you.
watching, like, share, comment, and wish her happy birthday because this is such an exciting time for us to start this podcast on our birthday months, on our combined birthday months.
Yes.
So more to come, but this is a great way to kick off. And yes, wherever you listen to your podcast, I hope you can listen to us and support us so that we can continue to share the voices of South Asian women in VARE. Because as you can see, we are amazing and we are wanting to share the voices
Mhm.
of those who are also doing amazing work in this space. And hopefully you will learn a thing or two as you go along.
Yes,
So more to come. Stay tuned and wait for our next episode. We have someone really, really exciting coming up.
we definitely do. See you soon.